Welcome everyone to this number 18th Claremont International Forum for Ecological Civilization. And this is the 7th youth forum to feature young scholars who are doing research and practice in ecological civilization. I don't know how this term of ecological civilization are familiar, or is it something that being talked about over here? But it might be once you go into in this lectures or going to these talks, and you might find that there's not that different than something that probably you're already familiar and you're working on. And since 2022, we've started an experiment of the youth forum. Now we're starting something even younger into the age. We call it teenagers, youth engagement. And we're not yet in the scholars and the teenagers we are, but we might grow into scholars or we might grow into practitioners. But all in all, we are growing into the the builders and the creatives for an ecological civilization. So ever since we started engaging young people from mostly China and the US, learning about ecological civilization, learning about process relational thinking, and develop project-based learning projects around these subjects, and then connecting the effort with the Claremont and EcoForum on a yearly basis and showcasing our project here. So this year is our pilot program. So we have around a dozen of students from both China and the US join the whole curriculum, but there are not many who finished everything, because I will tell a little bit later. This is a fun, a little bit challenging, but it's also very self-exploratory process of learning. So for the 5 finalists who have finished their projects in time, and Ryan here presenting as one of them, and we have another several of the finalists here with us online, and they're here near California, but due to transportation and several reasons, they couldn't be here in person. But we also welcome and thank you to be here with us online. Today we are going to have around, I think, 3 sessions of our gatherings. And first, I will make a small introductions of the Eco Innovation Challenge. This is the pilot program that we are creating for this with the EcoForum. Will be on a yearly basis, and this is our first year pilot program. So I will do a little bit introduction on that, and then we'll invite these eco innovators and to present the projects. And we will have them perhaps back and do the presentation, and we'll open to the audience to engage and ask questions, be curious, and encouraging them to explore more. And then we'll go into a discussion phase. Just see what, curiosities and questions emerges. And we also want you to help us build this program into insightful and more engaging and fun program for the coming year. So this is not just a presentation, it's also co-working session. We are now in our teenager age. I don't know how to put it more beautifully in English.
Humanity as a whole is in the stage of adolescence.
Thank you so much. The stage of adolescence. And we are now facing a lot of challenges, and as people are collectively going through a rite of passage together. So in that sense, I think we're all teenagers, and we're all experiencing what a teenager's mentality is, and like the liveliness and the boldness, but also maybe not too much aware of the consequences of our actions, and we're maturing, we're learning. So this is what I want to say first at the beginning of the youth forum. I also did this last year. I said it's the same. We are all teenagers. We're all young persons together. And so, we're just a few years, age and difference, experience and difference, but we have to come to terms collectively. So this effort, or we call it Eco Innovation Challenge, really started from the seeds was from last year's EcoForum. where last year you see in this called several faces, probably familiar to you and around, we had a really interesting intergenerational dialogue. And our founder of the whole forum, Dr. John B. Cobb, he's a very famous process philosopher and educators, and he wrote books in religion, in education, in economics, in philosophy, in theology and religions, in all different aspects. And he was the one last year reminded us, and he said, we have to find the language of use. And that's our key moving to the future. And we have been paddling in our mind, what does that mean to find the language of use? Until we came to that intergenerational forum where we have five finalists from last year and coming here in person, and with some of our elders here having a dialogue, and then they're having questions to each other in dialogue. And I remember Philip Clayton, our dean, and he wrote a whole question that he thinks that young people may say to the elders. And you read it out loud. And it was very, how to say it, like very impactful and like a firing, like him as an elder, pretending he's a younger person, firing to the elder generation. And then after he's done, and one of the girls responded and said, I think you're all right, but not strong enough. So yeah, we had this very lively, interesting conversations, and then we decided to take these legacies and this energy, this spirit forward, and see what programs can we create. So right after that, and Lauren and I, and together with another friend, Ling Yang, she's in China, we've come to this idea of creating educational projects and that we can bring cultural and intergenerational learning together. And we want to create something like a hubs, and then we're having different subjects and of your interest, and we have intergenerational learners come together to discuss and develop projects together, where elders can share the insights and experience and resources, and the younger person can bring curiosities, freshness, perspective, and then questions. And we've now working on the subjects of ecological economy in China, where every other week we meet online. We'll have an economist come and work with teenagers and high school students. We're reading Donut Economy together, asking each other questions. Something like that. But it's very hard to define what is us just yet, because we're like little seedlings and just coming out of the soil. Like, is that a tree or is it a flower? We don't know. We're growing, that for sure. We're ever becoming more complex and more rich and fun. Why do I keep coming back to the first page? Okay, and what we're really motivated and what we really want to do is just identifying and cultivating breakthroughs in an era of breakdowns. And we hear so much stories about something goes wrong and something is not working and it's breakdown everywhere, especially I think for young people here in America, and you constantly, if you're reading news, right, and you're hearing about something going wrong. But what we really wanted, curious, especially from younger person's perspective, so where do you see hope? Where is the breakthrough? And how do you be part of that breakthrough? And then that's a part of the space we want to go into. We want to cultivate, identify, and nurture, and be part of that breakthrough. And what we have for this past half a year of explorations of who we are, what we're doing, as you can see, this is a kind of explorations. This is my eco-inquiry project. So I'm delivering it to you, right? We have this joke. So you are delivering your projects and you are doing your eco-inquiry. But for us, in this project, we are also doing eco-inquiry. And then that's the several subjects that we've done this year. And we have discussed, we've created the gatherings where people come around and we go through learnings and experiential learnings together. And we've also designed projects that align with the nature's integral intelligence to give rise to the new story. That's something as part, one of the things we did for the design project was the translation of Parts for Life, kind of realigning our language system to the language of nature, of Gaia. And then we also developed this Eco Innovation Challenge program that we're all part of. And we take the vision for ecological civilization as our guiding star. And if we ask the question, if all civilization is cultivated through education, what does learning look like in an ecological civilization? I'd like that question to be with us, and especially with learners at heart. And perhaps you're teachers already, professors, you're practitioners, but we're all learners at heart. And we're constantly learning new things every day. So what learning look like? Or how can learning happen in this transitioning age? And how do we, learn together and learn better? Or how do you want to learn? Those are the questions that we want to ask. So for us, our inquiry comes in, in China, we've dealt with a lot of project-based learning projects, a lot of international school or innovative schools and teachers working with us. So we want to ask the questions, how does the project-based learning, that P would look like if it's the P is potential as a process or as a place? And usually the project-based learning, where does P stands for, right? The P is project, or sometimes it's a problem, like a common design thinking pathway is you have to first find a problem and then you frame a problem or you find a quote unquote solutions and deal with it, and then voila, the world is great, and we acknowledge that, but we want to challenge deeper. What does the P stands for? Could it be, what is a potential based learning? What would be to be a process or place-based learning, right? And then, the design thinking that is usually education, innovative education, the so-called today, we're using starting with, user-centric or human-centric design in the design thinking process. And we want to ask that, how can we create designs that is life-focused, life-affirming, not just human, but including also more than human world, that to be at heart when we start our design process. And how do we hold space for intergenerational connections and letting wisdom flows both ways? And what if we consider a tree as an elder? So this is very much, I think, the spirit of this Eco Innovation Challenge. We take the participants, you guys, to be our mentors as well. We want you to inform this process. How can this be more engaging, more fun, and how can this nurture you, serves your need? And other than human, can we learn from a more than human world? Can we learn from birds or from trees, from whales, that they have developed their intelligence over millenniums? And human is quite young and species on the earth. And what can we learn from the more than human elders? And yes, so the word and the award we announced earlier this year, and then after that we have developed this curriculum and taking the guiding principles. And some of the principles come from the process relational thinking. Some of the principles we get inspirations from indigenous teachings, and there's a combinations of Eastern and Western philosophy as well. So we really want to find a way to make these so-called principles more alive, more engaging, and to speak to young persons of today.
And then the challenge that we're having, probably, you know, our friends online or Ryan is quite familiar with this already. And we start with finding your inquiry. What is your eco inquiry? Not just the questions or problem that you need to solve, but an inquiry that potentially can lead you through your life of explorations. And then once you find the inquiries, and we'll start the eco-innovation process, design of projects, and looking at these 5 balance points of criterias. We want to challenge. This is not a this is not a competition per se, and this is a challenge for ourselves to be more holistic in our own thinking in our project. So we want to challenge ourselves in how can we combine the global concepts with the local action, and then how can we balance these the time diversity, so long-term thinking, like deep time, long-term thinking into immediate action. And how do we show, you know, once we know all this beautiful concept, where does human stands? What is the human agency in this complexity of the, you know, the problem of the world? Where does human stand? It's a very common environmental, a very common concept that, okay, since human is terrible to the environment, you know, better we don't do anything. Let the nature does what they do the best. Let the nature heal by itself. Or people would say that, but that will come into a lot of distress, a lot of despair, and then making human, especially our younger person today, thinking that, okay, I'm not really of useful to this planet. And really, we want to find the right positioning of our human and the positive human agencies, and how can we feature that in our projects. And this integrated, this holistic development with the, yes, looking at economic development, social development, as well as environmental restoration, and also integrated perception where we challenge you to be more whole, like left mind and right mind together. So if you're very analytical, can you try to be more artistic, vice versa? So this is the challenge. So yes, this is the last but not least, and we hope to engage more friends like you to be working with us either as an educator, as a mentor, as a well, you're a change maker or mentor, or participating with us, or spread the word, or make this to be more holistic. So yeah, thank you very much for listening.
Is that, can I ask you questions about ecological?
There you go.
Is that something that you're familiar with?
Like, is ecological civilization just defined as like ways to improve, like how our government works or how technology works to be more harmonious with like the environment, something like that. And that's I guess that explores. Does that mean, could it? Does it also like explore the conflict between the ways we solve our problems regarding the environment? Like, does that mean we just like prevent all environmental managerialism? Do we just not have human intervention, or do we continue like with the status quo with capitalism, keep innovating as much strategies as possible? Or does that, like, is that kind of where I'm going at?
What do you think?
Firstly to that question, or firstly what ecological civilization?
The whether which we're able to like the second question they were asking.
Oh, whether like it should be towards human
Should be.
intervention or capitalism.
Are we able to prevent any environmental degradation?
I guess like whether we can or just I think that technological solutions are more feasible, mostly because that there's sort of like there's no mindset shift away from sort of managing the environment. Like humans have like an innate capacity to have greed, or to pursue profit, or to pursue like commodities. We want things, but that doesn't mean that, or yeah, so I feel like the way we think is is always geared towards capital, like ways of capitalism, and I feel like I don't know if it's necessarily like the right or
Necessarily.
yeah, it's a really complicated question. I'm still like,
Yes.
I feel like there is sort of a problem with sort of trying to.
Well, other than technology, I think you're probably like, it's very, that's most what we
Oh,
can
yeah.
read of.
I think like,
Do you think some other, way that we can?
yeah, there's
engage-
definitely other ways to engage the environment. Like, does the future also mean like the way indigenous people used to live on the earth? You know, like living in communities and tribes rather than like, you know, tight-knit like governments
Mhm.
doing things. But
Do you think indigenous land management is a form of technology?
indigenous, I think that of course it is, or
Mhm.
like of course that could be like in the parameters of being technology because it's technology. I think technology doesn't necessarily have to be like mechanical.
Mhm.
It could also mean like in the innovation of the way we think as well could be.
Oh, that's brilliant. Innovations in how we think.
Yeah, but like the ways indigenous people used like their mindset was definitely
Yeah.
very different about how they're more like definitely more collectivist. I feel like more
Can organizing a community be a form of technology?
organizing a farming community.
Yeah.
I would find that more as an action, not as like a like the act like what are you saying here? Like just forming communities?
Yeah.
The
Any
act
way of managing and forming and
I think that
co-creating with community within as a form of technology.
creating-
Social technology.
I guess creating a way of community could be a way of like I feel like the action itself of creating a community, like for example, like I start a club
Mm.
for I don't know, eating pizza. I wouldn't define that as a community, but maybe it's like something new, like if I'm trying to find a new way to create a community, for example, like I want to invent a new genre of music
Mhm.
and make a community based off that. I think that's sort of like a developed technology.
It could be
Could
very
be.
well. There's many layers of technology in your music genre community, it sounds like.
I guess.
You can use a certain technology to create music and you could, use the technology or you can organize your community in a such way. It's a new
Like, yeah.
method
Like going back to
of connecting with each other.
like I'm still like self-conflicted about how we should solve our environmental problems. Like does that be going? I mean right now we are also trying to think of
Let's
like,
just put it on the
governments are
screen.
trying to
It's fine.
decouple. trying
Yeah,
to keep
just make it
recycling
simpler.
materials.
We just projected it
Yeah.
there.
But
It's fine.
it's also interesting because the environmental technologies that we are like based on also create environmental harm. Like
My question
Yeah.
to you is in this subject,
Oh,
what do
yeah.
you do?
Huh?
What do you do?
what would I
What do
do
you do personally, or at home, or at school? What do you do?
that relates to the
engage?
environment, to
Yes.
engage the environment? That's a good question.
Sorting
I
the
don't-
garbage or composting.
Well, it's like aside from those like minor things, like probably not as much as like what Ryan is doing. Like, of course, I've been like done past volunteer work, like like picking up like beach cleanups. Also, like research on like solar power net metering policies in California. Like,
I
thought
see
that-
the over.
Yeah, but my concentration is environmental science. These are the kind of things I did around high school. It was, I mean, my major was political, like is political science right now,
Yeah.
but that wasn't very my biggest concentration of any.
Concentrate.
Well, I guess like, yeah, okay.
I mean, it's a question for all of us, right? Of how do we relate to the subject that we're studying.
Engaging could
We're
also,
good at studying it, researching it.
yeah,
And there's also a relationship that are developing with the environment.
well, engaging could also.
There are emotions around.
I think engaging could also mean just dialogue, you, like,
Yeah.
whether you are for or against, like, innovative solutions to solve the environment,
Mm.
like, they're still engaged, like, debating it, like, but I guess I've done that.
Oh, good.
Yeah, okay, all right. Thanks for the deep thinking. Okay, so welcome everyone. We're about to begin our presentations for our finalists from our Living Earth Eco Innovation Challenge. But before they begin, we're going to put each of our students on the spot. And of course, we're really going to put Ryan on the spot because he's first.
Sure.
We're going to ask each of our students to ask these questions. Before you present, can you tell us three things? What brought you to this challenge? Why did you decide to join the Eco Innovation Challenge? What brought you to your eco project topic? So what sparked the inspiration in you? And what was your personal challenge within the project that you encountered? How did you rise to the challenge personally?
I guess the first question is like, why did I decide to join this challenge? Throughout my childhood and like right now, I've always loved the environment. Whether I'm feel stressed or like, I always go out to the environment, bike around, walk around, and it really helps calm me down. And I just want to like do as much as I can to help the environment on that aspect. On the note of why I chose like sort of my project, I just really interested in like the energy market, having clean energy in general. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but if you guys look at your like electricity bill, you look at it, it's like crazy. It's like really complicated. I've always wanted to just go in there, explore that aspect and just explore energy. And then one like sort of challenge that I had to overcome was some of the coding aspects of like my visual. I had to learn a lot of stuff for that. But I think overall, it was a really rewarding experience and allowed me to learn a lot.
Thanks, Ryan. All right, take it away. We're ready to see your project.
So yeah, my name is Ryan Lowe. First, I want to give a quote. As the Beatles once said, "Here comes the sun, and it's all right." But is it really all right? The sun, as in the greenhouse effect facilitated by the sun, rising temperatures contributing to global warming, the many disastrous effects of global warming, including climate change, ocean acidification, habitat destruction. Sorry for like the weird pun, but those are the sort of questions that I aim to answer in this project on the analysis and capacities of offshore wind connected by policy through the specific guiding inquiry of what are the potentials of offshore wind and what location optimization and policies can accelerate the development of offshore wind whilst balancing environmental and economic concerns. And you might be wondering, how does offshore wind relate to global warming? Well, glad you asked that, because just to give some context, the UN cites that around 90% of our carbon emissions come from fossil fuel sources, a majority of which do come from energy sources. And a way to mitigate that is through clean energy. And a new frontier in clean energy is offshore wind. And offshore wind is so unique based on its location offshore from the coast, where wind speeds are higher and thus give that potential for more efficiency. There are two different types of offshore wind, that being fixed offshore wind, which is optimal between 50-meter depths, and floating offshore wind, which is optimal between 50 to 1,000-meter depth, which both serve their own unique advantages. And offshore wind as a whole completely blows, no pun intended, its competition out of the water. And this is ironic because this project as a whole was approached through the blow plant. So we wanted to break down the potential of offshore wind, find ways, how can we actually implement this? I mean, what is its long-term sustainability? What's its long-term potential? This project aimed to launch and propose specific policies that could help accelerate the development of offshore wind. And finally, outreach to sort of facilitate these policies, because people, us, are what really facilitates sort of action. You guys might be wondering, where is W? Well, W is silent, because we cannot remain silent while global warming remains rampant. And the blow plan as a whole generally serves as a blueprint to show the potential of offshore wind for specific companies and for specific governments. So part B, let's break it down. So basically in this project, we focused on seeing if offshore wind as a whole is sustainable long term. So this project looked at the National Renewable Energy Laboratory's hypothetical offshore wind plant in 2035, looking at its capex, or the money for the maintenance/expenses, the energy production of this hypothetical plant, and the lifetime cost per megawatt hour for this hypothetical plant. And from that, we got a general cost analysis and time diversity standpoint to look at the break-even time. So as you can see here, it's a little tiny, but the break-even time for fixed offshore wind is around 17.7 years, and the break-even time for floating is around 24.91 years. And this just shows that offshore wind does have that potential to be long-term economically sustainable. But what is more important is our location analysis. When you're like sort of buying a house, what do they always say? Location, location, location. That's the exact same for the offshore wind, because it should be noted that offshore wind does have an environmental impact, mostly from the energy transport system. So transporting the energy from the turbines to the coast, usually along the seabed. So that does have an environmental impact, and that should be noted. So a way to have that holistic development, balancing both those environmental and both those economic concerns, this project aims to develop a location optimization model by overlaying specific data called GIST. And GIST data, to give a gist, is basically data tied to specific locations. So data that we considered was the wind speed GIST data to sort of correlate generally to the power output of the turbines, the NOAA data or the environmental hotspots around the US, as well as the shore depth to consider both fixed and floating offshore wind. And overlaying that, you get the model as shown. And this model serves as a general metric to where you can put these offshore wind turbines. So the blue circle right here correlates to around for fixed offshore wind, and the green correlates to floating offshore wind. You guys might be wondering, what are the benefits, what are the disadvantages of both fixed and floating? Well, fixed is optimal for 50 meters, so its location range is a little more restricted, but it's more efficient compared to offshore floating offshore wind in those specific locations. While floating offshore wind has a much wider range of locations, whilst being a little bit more environmentally sustainable in that aspect. But this sort of model just serves as a sort of place where like these companies, where these governments can implement offshore wind as like a general recommendation. In L, launching initiatives, part L, launching initiatives. At the time of this project, Biden had this recent goal of having 30 gigawatts of fixed offshore wind and 15 gigawatts of floating offshore wind by 2035. And just this project as a whole focused on this goal and see how can we actually reach this goal. Shown here, this is the amount of turbines that we take to actually reach those specific goals as shown. But really, looking at this goal, looking at this, like obtaining this goal, you really want to look to other countries who have already successfully implemented offshore wind. As shown here, this is UK's Horsey 1, one of their most biggest offshore wind plants. This UK offshore wind plant powers around 1 million homes with clean energy. And a major strategy that they used in establishing this plant was contracts for differences, or guaranteeing a fixed price for offshore wind to incentivize the establishment of these plants. And sort of policies focused on that could accelerate the development of offshore wind. Likewise, we also need to consider the environmental impact of offshore wind. Right now in the US, according to NEPA, most governmental projects have to have an environmental impact statements, but policies could also expand on just the general requirements. So for instance, in offshore wind's case, having this environmental impact statement look at the time diversity of the bird migration. So how does offshore wind affect bird migrations? Or looking at how offshore wind affects the people, the cultural landscape of the people living around these plants. So all these could be considered in this expanded environmental impact statement. But really, policies are policies, but what facilitates policy are you guys, because people who petition, people who elect certain lawmakers for these policies, what helps these like policies sort of pass, and what helps these policies sort of have a real life impact. And this visual for this project focused on educating people through a unique way, an integrated perspective, through gaming. Right now in our sort of pop culture, humor, entertainment seen through social media like TikTok, Instagram, etc., are really facilitating a lot of information. I think it's right of us to go with that trend of utilizing entertainment, utilizing humor to sort of facilitate the information that we can want to convey to other people. So this game called the Green Knights, the environmental game, had the player experience the effects of global warming firsthand, help sort of empower them through a fun sort of beach cleanup game, and in the end, educated them about the importance of clean energy, of the importance of using your energy at specific certain parts of the day. And the game as a whole was developed using Unity, using C#, and just to give a general metric, I got people I knew from my community to play this game, and in the end, these people felt more environmentally inclined about the issues surrounding our world. And with that, through like the sort of blow plan, can we ensure that the world is not just quote unquote all right, but absolutely amazing? And yes, thank you guys. Hope you guys enjoyed the presentation. These are my
All right, we're going to ask you the same 3 questions before your presentation. What brought you to this challenge? Why did you decide to join the Living Earth Eco Innovation Challenge?
Because I want to share my love of birds and wanted to encourage everyone to protect them.
Wonderful. And the second one is, what brought you to your eco project topic?
As I said, I like birds, and one time I look up at the sky, I don't see a lot of stars. So there's a lot of light pollution and it might disrupt the birds. So I just thought of that and made this project.
Wonderful. And what was one of your personal challenges that you encountered during this project?
When I was practicing, I sometimes exceeded the time limit. So I shortened the time for each of the slides to present.
Wonderful. So you were learning through doing. All right, Jack, thanks so much. And go ahead and share your presentation with us.
Okay, hello, this is my presentation on the impacts of light pollution on bird rest and flight behavior. This matters because birds are important signs of ecosystem health. Light pollution is a emerging threat to birds that fly in, like, for example, north to south, they're migratory birds. It disrupts birds' sleep, alters behavior, and affects navigation. And by studying the bird flight routes and light pollution levels, we can uncover hidden effects. This project combines local data with global action for the protection of wildlife. The guiding inquiry that brought me to this presentation was, how can we reduce light pollution to protect bird life and promote a deeper harmony between human society and natural ecosystems, both locally and globally? And the research question we're going to find out in this presentation is, does light pollution impact the restoration and flight behavior of migratory birds? So in this project, I analyzed bird GPS data and sky brightness during the night. Low speed periods are used for approximate for sleeping for the birds. Flight speed is calculated between GPS locations, so it's between the distance and time, which calculates speed. I matched bird positions, like neighbors, and with nearby light pollution data. So it's like finding values between those and then matched it with the light pollution. And I also removed unrealistic values and corrected it for different time zones. My method, I got 2 files from Kaggle, and it says that there are 3 lesser black-backed gulls. They're birds named Eric, Nico, and Zan. And this map on the left shows the migration routes of the 3 birds between Africa and Europe. And on the right, it shows the individual gulls' flight patterns. This graph shows the correlation between restoration and light pollution. So when there's more light pollution, there is a lower restoration. And for this graph, it shows that a higher light pollution level corresponds with higher flight speeds. This shows that higher light pollution levels correspond with shorter restoration and increased average flight speed. Therefore, we have concluded that light pollution negatively affects bird behavior. This could suggest physiological or behavioral stress. Light pollution disrupts birds' ability to rest, and the exposure of artificial light to migratory birds might increase the stress to fly faster. So there are 8 strategies to call to action to protect these birds. Number 1, use fully shielded outdoor lighting fixtures. Number 2, implement motion sensors and timers. Number 3, use warm colored LED lights. Number 4, reduce overlighting. Number 5, establish dark sky audiences. Number 6, promote awareness and education. Number 7, designate and protect dark sky reserves. And finally, number 8, encourage smart city lighting. In conclusion, light pollution affects negatively bird speed and behavior. This evidence supports urgent need for light pollution reduction, and simple changes from all of us can help both wildlife as the birds and human beings. In the future, I might incorporate long-term behavior monitoring with other factors and variables and use data on weather patterns, land use, and habitat availability. And this project meets the criteria for local climate changes and protect migratory species globally. Life-centered human agency is we have the power to realign urban design with wildlife patterns. Holistic development. This project connects the topics of ecology, technology, and behavior. Time diversity. In the past, it honors bird life cycles, like in circadian rhythms, where birds sleep and fly regularly, and it informs future policy. Integrated perception supports a web of life perspective and more than human ethics. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Congratulations. Wonderful. Okay, so next up we have Sophie. And before you begin, Sophie, I'd like to ask you these 3 questions. What brought you to this challenge? Why did you decide to join? What brought you to your eco project topic? And what was your personal challenge that you encountered during this project?
Well, for me, I joined the Eco Challenge because I care really deeply about protecting the planet and the health of all living creatures on it. And I wanted to take part of a project that would be able to, where I could be able to take my ideas and turn them into real physical results that I could share with the world. I chose my topic of microplastic pollution because of the hidden serious issues that a lot of people are not fully aware of. Though they may be aware of the overall topic, they aren't aware of the deep consequences that are rooted in it, which I wanted to help raise awareness for. A challenge that I went through during this project was probably about taking my project, which it has a lot of health aspects on like human lung inflammation, but also be able to move it away from the human centered to also global with all living things. Does it work?
Yep, looking great.
Perfect. Okay. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me today while I talk about my project, Pixels and Pollution, fighting microplastic pollution with deep learning AI to detect lung inflammation. My guiding inquiry was how can we address the global ecological and public health risk of microplastic pollution through new technological innovation? To start us off today, I want to ask a question to everyone here in the room and online. So who here thinks they have microplastics inside of them? You can just raise your hand.
You got everybody. Everybody's raising their hands.
Oh, wow, that is a very interesting results. This question is really hard to answer though, because we don't really see or feel the microplastics, though we may know from like science research that they are inside of us. We can't feel or see it, at least not yet. From the air we breathe to the soil we walk on, though, microplastics have permeated the entire globe. They come from the breaking down of plastics or intentional manufacturing of microplastics. Now, studies suggest that when microplastics are inhaled, they may trigger inflammation, fibrosis, and other long-term respiratory issues. This project ultimately is a part of a growing movement to protect the environment and public health, one scan, one pixel, and one policy at a time. Some background information on the microplastic issue is that the most prominent culprit is currently synthetic fibers, meaning nylon and polyesters, along with other vehicle and city urban dust that contribute a large portion. These plastics break off from natural weathering and wear that enter the environment through runoff, wastewater, and the wind. Currently, in this age, children have become the most at-risk population for health complications because of microplastics. Here I have an infographic to better illustrate the inhalation of microplastics in the lifetime of a human. Within a year, humans inhale the average of the height of 2 giraffes. Within their lifetime, at least the height of the Eiffel Tower and up to the height of Snowdown Mountain, which is really crazy. There are also a lot of environmental impacts of microplastics. Microplastics accumulate in organisms and animals through ingestion or absorption, which then bioaccumulates up through the food chain as animals eat other animals and so forth. This can harm the development, reproductive, and digestive abilities, which also release toxic chemicals into the environment and waterways. To address this problem, I've proposed 4 steps. My first step is to identify the harm using my AI model, Lungi. Lungi is a CNN-based deep learning model that uses an AI architecture that is able to recognize patterns in images. It's taught on real lung tissue samples, both animal and human, that then be able to identify exact areas of damage with heat maps and to identify biomarkers. It classifies images as either normal lung tissue, common inflammation, or microplastic-induced inflammation. A little pipeline of my work. We start by loading our libraries and data sets from a variety of different sources into the programs. Then we combine those data sets together and then pre-process all the images by normalizing their stain, sizes, image augmentation, and such. We then define our AI model architecture and compile and train the model based on those images. The model can then be evaluated for accuracy and then also have biomarker and GradCam identification options. Once we have this model, we can then move on to our next step to raise awareness. The problem with the microplastic problem is that it's nearly impossible to see in our everyday lives, making the real effort to care about the issue rather difficult. By bringing forth the invisible harm and making the invisible visible, we can use Lungi as a powerful tool to raise public awareness as a catalyst of change against microplastic pollution. We can take action on both local and global scales to raise awareness. Locally, we can hand out flyers along with promoting announcements at clubs and schools or community events and presentations, such as the flyer shown to the right. Globally, we can take to social media to reach a diverse and vast audience to raise global awareness campaigns. Some actions you can take today to protect yourself and the planet are such as avoiding single-use plastics, limiting your consumption of seafood, as that is very highly concentrated in microplastics. You can also wash your clothes on cold and letting them dry naturally, which can help reduce the microplastic shed, or by purchasing clothes made from natural fibers instead of the nylons and polyesters. Also, good general advice is not heating food in plastic containers and using air purifiers to combat dust. The next step, once we've raised public awareness, is to advocate for policy change. In order to advocate for policy change, we need to have a strategy that can engage policymakers and the public using both short-term and long-term policies that can work hand in hand together. Short-term, we can take tax incentives and fines to encourage businesses to use more sustainable alternatives instead. We can also offer public health warnings and labeling on products so consumers understand the risks that come with microplastic inhalation when they make their informed purchases. Long term, we want to be able to invest in research towards sustainable alternatives like seaweed plastics or those that are biodegradable and don't harm humans or wildlife when they break down. Ultimately, the goal of all these is to move to a complete shift away from microplastics in order to have a truly sustainable society. A little bit of local action to bring the attention to the cause is through taking local petitions, which can then be taken to policymakers and city councils to show that the community truly cares about this issue. After this, the final step is to encourage engagement. The key to maintaining an effort is through community commitment on the long term, because the microplastic issue is not just an issue of individual or localized impact, it affects whole ecosystems and community health worldwide. So, by highlighting how microplastics infiltrate food chains and pollute water supplies and affect respiratory health, we can encourage a collective responsibility to reduce plastic usage and battle for a cleaner and healthier environment by taking both the world, the community, and the individual together. This importance of action is so important right now. Too often, people think of us and the environment as separate entities, but in truth, we are far more interconnected, and when the world suffers, we suffer. Microplastics have infiltrated almost every ecosystem, harming wildlife and humans, but their impacts are largely unseen, and the full extent of the problem is still unfolding. All living things are interdependent, which means our purchasing decisions, lifestyle, and the policies we promote will influence what happens in the world around us, even if we don't realize it now. So, as stewards of the earth, we can create a new future on this planet that will serve the good of all life, not just human life, but non-human life as well. To conclude, addressing the issue of microplastic pollution brings us to think about the interconnectedness of life and balance that sustains our ecosystems. This knowledge helps to remind us about the importance of the health of the planet and its inhabitants, the intrinsic value of life, along with the impact of every decision we make, from the policies we support and what products we consume, how it affects not only the present, but also the future and hundreds of thousands of species now and yet to come. Microplastic pollution challenges us to move beyond temporary fixes to embrace a truly sustainable living. And by taking the lead today, we can create a world where all life can thrive. Thank you so much for listening.
Congratulations, Sophie. So wonderful. Thank you, thank you. And next up, we have BingBing, who will be sharing. There we go. All right, before you start your presentation, we have the same 3 questions for you. What brought you to the Living Earth Eco Innovation Challenge, and why did you decide to join? What brought you to your eco project topic? And what was your personal challenge that you encountered during this project?
Yeah. So about what brought me to this challenge, because I care about the environment, and I was just like really surprised to learn how much our food choices can affect the environment, and I joined this project to explore the connection, and help others become more aware. And what brought me to my topic? Well, I chose the hidden environmental impact of food, not only because last summer I did a project about that, but also about just like the food is something like we deal with every day, like without thinking about its effect. So I wanted to understand how different food contributes to pollution and climate change. And about my personal challenge, well, so firstly, it's hard to find clear, um, easy to understand the data about food and the environment. And also another one is for my language challenge.
Yeah, well, you're doing great. You really rose to the challenge.
Thank you.
Well, you can share your screen and we are ready for your presentation. Yep, looks good.
Today, I'll share with you about the hidden environmental impact of our food choices. My eco project was guided by this inquiry. How can we transform food systems to reduce their environmental impact while supporting healthy, culturally meaningful, and accessible diets for all? Then, before we begin, it's important to know that understanding this issue means going beyond surface facts to the deeper principles behind them. So, we'll start with what we can see and gradually explore underlying causes. First, a question. How often do you consider the environmental impact of your food choices when making meals or buying food? In my survey among students in the LA area, only 39% consider the environmental impact of their food choices. Then why does the survey matter? An article in Nature pointed out food production is responsible for over a quarter of global greenhouse gas emissions. Our food system is a major source of pollution, contributing to climate change, biodiversity loss, and resource depletion. And then where do all these environmental impacts come from? Data from Ecological shows industrial red meat and dairy are among the highest impact foods, but the pollution comes not just from the animals. It's also from growing their feed, which depletes land and water resources and uses heavy chemical fertilizers. As well, this all the energy used in running meat factories and transporting the products. And in places like Amazon, forests are being cleared to make room for grazing or growing more feed, causing serious environmental harm. Animal foods give us key nutrients like protein and iron, but factory farms also hurt the environment. So we can lower the environmental impact of our food choices by avoiding industrialized meat and dairy, and supporting sustainable farming. Plant-based diets generally have a smaller carbon footprint and require less land and water compared to animal-based diets. However, they are not entirely without impact. Even plant-based farming can cause problems, like soil damage and chemical pollution. So it's important to choose organic, locally grown food. So let's look at the science behind this. Modern farming feeds billions, but it's hard on the planet, causing over a quarter of global emissions, using half of our land and 70% of fresh water. It also pollutes rivers and hurts biodiversity. Livestock alone makes up 94% of all mammal biomass. But the good news is we do have solutions. Regenerative agriculture helps restore soil and fight climate change. In California, the Healthy Soils Program funds farmers to improve soil health. By investing into systems, we create more sustainable food production. Countries like Rwanda are also adopting national plans, proving this model works on a large scale. It's not just farming, it's a climate solution. We can also look back to move forward. Long ago, civilizations like Liangzhu farmed in harmony with nature, especially through rice farming. Regenerative farming brings together ancient wisdom and modern science to heal the land and reduce pollution. Our food choices have environmental cost, greenhouse gases, water pollution, and land damage. But smarter choices can help. Avoiding industrialized meat and dairy, eating more plant-based food, and resourcing local foods all reduces emissions and pollution. Adopting programs like Rwanda's circular food system that show how rethinking food reduction can restore soil and cut waste. Real change also needs teamwork, policies, school programs, and students' actions. So what can students do? Many of us already care and we are ready to lead. So first, speak up for better food policies that supports regenerative farming. Second, choose more local and plant-based foods. Third, help make composting and food waste programs part of our schools. And fourth, start hands-on projects like gardens or food sharing. And fifth, spread the word. Show others how our food choices impact the planet. Change starts with us. As students, we can start by taking local action. This can motivate others to create a global impact to help environments through our food choices. By designing promotional posters and presentations for schools, I want to help students learn more about the environmental impact of our food choices. Through clear visuals and relatable facts, I aim to make sustainability feel accessible and actionable for everyone. The small actions add up when more of us involved. By using our power wisely, we can support food systems that protect the earth, connect emotionally to nature, and build a more caring world. Tonight, I challenge you to photograph your dinner plate and think about what sustainability tastes like to you. Share your story and invite others to join this food journey. Thank you so much for listening. I'm happy to chat more or answer any questions.
Congratulations. Questions from the audience for our four presenters who are here.
I've got
Okay.
a question. Or was it Brian?
Oh, Brian.
Right.
Thank you for your presentation about wind power. Two questions. First, I know that some.
Yeah.
Let's get up here.
Yeah. There you go.
I know that there's a simultaneous interest in using waves, and are there any wind power installations that also take advantage of tidal forces to generate energy? And also, once they generate the energy, are there batteries or are there wires? Like, where does, as the wind turbines are going, where does the energy go? Does it get transmitted immediately, or is it using batteries?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna focus on the battery question because I know most about that.
Okay.
But basically, what usually happens is that the energy that comes from the wind turbine transports and then goes into something called like capacitance. That's like a whole field of it. And then they're stored in like a battery. But the major problem with that is that these batteries aren't as efficient as like they aren't as efficient as we want them to be. And that's another thing I've always wanted to like research is like how to like help efficientize like the battery systems. And the major reason that we want that is specifically in solar energy because there's a huge problem called the duck curve. That's when the solar energy production is high, but then the demand is low, and then when the demand is high, the solar energy production is low. And it's a way to sort of mitigate that is what you were talking about, like the pad and storing the energy and just measures to just make that better. I forgot your second, third.
It's about the title.
Oh, the
of
title.
waves. Yeah, do they have any technology around that connects to wind power?
I don't know that off my top of the head, but I know that the wave energy also is a new, definitely really big frontier in like clean energy. And I also like, I'm just interested in energy as a whole, so maybe someday I'll like.
It's because you're so energetic.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Ryan. Have a seat. Any other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question for Sophie. Sophie, I'm wondering, how would you think that your AI program could be distributed?
This would probably be further developed and then it might be licensed to different medical centers, like probably hospitals that have access to the resources to be able to perform lung scans and to be able to then take those scans and then run it through the AI, or to just research institutes, I think.
Right.
Can I ask a follow-up for Sophie?
absolutely.
I know microparticulates in air pollution also cause inflammation in lungs. And I was wondering how they can distinguish the inflammation that may be caused by microplastics versus something like microparticulates or other
Um,
of inflammation.
It's a really good question. I'm not actually fully sure. I think there would probably be some differentiation because of the different probably size or properties of microplastics. So they probably would have different abrasive effects on lung tissue, which could be identified.
Nice, great answer. Good answer.
And this is for you, BingBing. I am so excited by the fact that you want people to take pictures of their food. Now on YouTube, people do this, you know, but they don't do it for the purpose of showing that they are being environmentally responsible. And I think that's a great idea. So are we to send you pictures? Are you gonna?
Oh, yeah, you can send it in the chat on this meeting, or you can send it to my email.
Well, I'll keep in touch with you and
Okay.
I can share some of the
You
things.
have to get on a Chinese WeChat.
Oh,
I've got it.
Oh, we'll connect you. We'll get you connected to BingBing on WeChat. You and Jay can exchange dinner photos.
So that's the biggest thing, and you've got all of the elements there in terms of how to get the word out and that sort of thing. What I didn't see explicitly is change your own diet, but I think you didn't put that in because you've already done it.
Yes.
So very good, thank you so much.
And BingBing shared with us at our last presentation that the host family she's staying with has a backyard garden.
Oh, yes.
So that is a change to her diet. She gets to eat the fresh food right from the garden, and it's been really inspiring for her.
I'll share with you what I got from my garden last July.
Okay, well, get you connected.
thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from our audience? Okay.
I have a question for my brother.
Oh, no.
I actually have two hardball questions. So for the efficiency of wind turbines, how did you quantify efficiency? Does this mean like wind blown over a kilowatt per hour, or is it just like energy input over energy out? Like how did you quantify that?
So there's two aspects where
No, it's fine. We got the camera.
there's two aspects when I needed to quantify energy. One was when I was breaking down like the time to break even for an offshore wind plant. From that, I just used the energy output of like that hypothetical plant based on like the data that I used from the NREL or the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. The second portion where I needed to quantify energy was the location optimization. From that, I used the wind speed, but generally that just to get a general metric, but that in real practice that doesn't correlate to like the energy output. It's a lot more complicated based on like the tilt of like the turbine or something. But just to give like a general correlation, I just use that.
Okay, so,
What's your second question?
okay, you mentioned like fixed and floating turbines. You also said that fixed turbines are, even though they're supposedly more efficient and they have like a small, but they have a smaller range, correct? And floating turbines have a wider range, like, but they're less efficient. So did you mean by range coverage? Like, what does that mean? Does that,
Just specific depths, because floating can be between 50 to 1,000 meter depths, and fixed is only around 15 meter depth.
so that's like, as in
Like shore depth of like the ocean. So looking at like California, the Pacific coast, it's a lot deeper compared to the East Coast. But just metrics on
That's the question.
Huh?
Is it possible? Okay.
Could I ask Jack one more question?
Yeah, go for it.
Hey, Jack, I was curious about, one of the recommendations had to do with dark sky policies, which I think means, trying to have buildings turn off their lights and things. And I've always wondered when I fly on an airplane and I look down and I see all these light bulbs on, all, huge empty parking lots that are, illuminated, and, it's 2 a.m. and every building and every floor is lit up. And I've always thought that seems like it would be very expensive. And so why are they doing that anyway? Do you know why it is that light pollution happens? Since it costs money, why are people shining lights in the middle of the night anyway?
And it's okay if you don't know.
Well, maybe it's because people just need lights, convenient lights to build cities.
Sometimes it's a security measure. But yeah, I think it's like you said, a convenience. Oh yeah, an advertisement, yeah.
And then we had a saying in China, it's like 灯火通明. If you have an urban area that is very very lit, and means it's rich. It's just
Prosperous.
it's very
Does the same thing happen in China? Do you also
very
have-
much. Yes, big time.
Yeah.
So it is expensive to show that how prosperous I am, that I have money to light up all the night sky. Shows how rich I am. It's now that we talk about it out loud, it's so irrational. Yeah. But I have just a general question to our young participants regarding this morning's dialogue, this morning's talk on AI. I wonder if how much, what role does AI play in your life or your, study today? And in general, what do you see is the kind of a future of AI and human relationship? It's an open question to any of you, whoever wants to.
But we only have 5 minutes.
Oh, 5 minutes?
I have to present the award.
Yes.
You have enough.
That's something else.
To do. So,
You want to say something?
I can say something anyone else doesn't want to say.
go ahead and
But
start.
I'll just
Go ahead,
start it off. I think AI definitely can be used as a tool, but I think we do need to be really careful of it on some aspects. I think one way to approach it is how like the European Union's approaching it through their like AI Act, because there are some like safety concerns of AI Act. Of course, it's not going to be like the extreme robot revolution, but like definitely safety risks on like deepfakes, misinformation, cyber attacks. So I think you do need to be careful when approaching it with research. And also like the question, well, like where does the information that the AI use come from? But I think it definitely is a really powerful tool, but I think you need to regulate it. That's just my opinion.
Here, I agree.
Anybody else want to, online students, do any of you want to share? Sophie, go ahead.
I think that AI is definitely this new cutting edge technology that's coming out in this new era, but I think it's definitely, there needs to be some definite moderation of it, but it's also a very useful tool. It's kind of like calculators back in the day when they first came out, and everyone thought that maybe it would replace mathematics, but it doesn't. It's more of another tool to help us reach the next level of computing, and like AI will be the next tool to reach the next level of research and sciences.
I'm sorry, it's a tool and we need to use it wisely. Thanks, Sophie. Anybody else want to have a quick comment? Okay. So to begin with, I'm going to share with each of you your awards, and then we will announce our winner. So to begin with, BingBing, congratulations on your project of the hidden environmental impacts of our food choices, for courageously taking a deep exploration and growing from striving to thriving. BingBing, we recognize that you had the most growth in this process and in this project. You started with a very simple chart. And from that chart, you wrote an entire report and created your entire slideshow and added many, many dimensions to your project. So congratulations, BingBing.
Thank you.
For Lucy and her project on Sheng, The Echoes of the Earth is a beautiful song that she composed. Congratulations to Lucy for awakening ecological awareness with multi-sensory artistic creativity. Congratulations, Lucy. And next up, we have Ryan for an analysis of the capabilities and technologies of offshore wind connected by policy. Ryan, we congratulate you for exploring dynamic possibility in energy transition and ecological awareness. Congratulations, Ryan. And for Jack, in your project of light pollution impact on bird rest and flight behavior, we celebrate your caring for the more than human world with intricate insight and unique perceptions. Congratulations, Jack. And finally up, Sophie, for your projects of pixels and pollution. We award you this for integrating science, technology, ecology, and public awareness for the common good. Congratulations, Sophie. And now we announce that Sophie, you are the grand prize winner. And coming up in second place, we have Ryan. And also BingBing, you two were a tie. So for you, Sophie, we at Living Earth Co-Creative will do everything we can to help you take the next step in your project. If you would like to connect with people in coding, we can help you make those connections. If you would rather focus on those petitions and the environmental policy, we can help support you in taking those next steps. So you let us know which aspect of your projects that you want to grow, and we are going to support you in taking that next step. So congratulations, Sophie.
Thank you so much. I am so honored, and I will definitely continue to reach out and continue this project to move it forward.
Wonderful, wonderful. And for Ryan, we wanted to extend a special invitation to be the Living Earth Eco Innovation Challenge Student Ambassador,
Sure.
which we think fits you just right. So we'll talk with you more about that in one of our following meetings. So thank you all for joining us, and congratulations to all of you students. It was really lovely to have you join us here at the Youth Forum, at the International Forum for Ecological Civilization. Thank you for completing your projects in the Eco Challenge and bringing your unique creativity to the development of ecological civilization. Yeah.